Good afternoon, everybody. This is our Week 8 Fantasy Football EKL preview. I can't believe it's already Week 8. The fantasy playoffs are beginning to come into view. Before I get started, I would like to say to Pierce, thank you for the insight on transactions. I really enjoyed it. It's interesting to hear about all the players being picked up and dropped, and who's picking up and dropping them, and the fact that Sandvig and Pierce are 46% of all add and drops for the league was just an interesting stat. So I appreciate that. Thank you for keeping up with the spreadsheet. One of the things I did want to remind everybody about is that there is a keeper feature included in Yahoo this year, and I took advantage of that. And so if you look at your lineup, your starting lineup, or just your lineup, your normal lineup, there is a little K next to every player, and that indicates keeper. So every player on your team that has a K next to it was a player that you either have an option to keep next year, and they were a player you kept this year, or a player you drafted this year. As soon as you drop a player from your team, that K is then removed from that player. The new player that you add to your team doesn't have a K because they don't have keeper eligibility. So just a quick way of keeping track of what players on your team or on other teams have keeper potential and what players do not. So, but thank you though, Pierce, for keeping up with the spreadsheet on that and for giving us some transaction insights. All right, let's get into our matchups. Week 8. Week 8, you have Matt going up against Sandvig, the third versus the 7th place team. 4-3 Matt versus the 3-4 Mark Sandvig. At quarterback, I like Robert Griffin III to play well against the Broncos. So, Mark, you're going to get some good points from him. I think that Palmer is going to do also. He's going to do well against Atlanta. Atlanta is a fairly favorable matchup for quarterbacks, and I think Pryor, in and of himself, going up against the Steelers is not helping Matt's cause at all. This is definitely one of those weeks. It's interesting how the schedule for the NFL is set up. Last week there were only 2 teams on bye, and this week there are 6. So there are a lot of problems up and down fantasy rosters this week, and so certain teams have certain advantages because of who they're going up against and when they're meeting them. And Matt going up against Sandvig has the opportunity of not playing against Ryan Matthews or Danny Woodhead, but Sandvig going up against Matt has the opportunity of not playing against Cutler or Flacco or Hayward Bay, DHB. But although Cutler is also out on injury. And Matt's team is just decimated right now with buys and injuries. Doug Martin, Randall Cobb being 2 guys that are also hurt on Matt's team. Quarterback position goes to Sandvig. At the wide receiver position, you have Calvin Johnson going up against Dez Bryant. I think they will take each other out this week, and so it really comes down to Edelman versus Garcon. And I think Garcon is going to beat Edelman, so Sandvig gets the win at wide receiver as well. At running backs, Zach Stacy going up against Seattle. It's going to be a bad matchup or a hard matchup for any running back, but then you add in the fact that you have Kellen Clemens, I think, as the starting quarterback for Seattle. So that's not going to help Stacy at all because Seattle's just going to, the Legion of Boom is going to be able to come up against and stack the box to take out Zach Stacy. I think Pierre Thomas is a decent play for the Bills, but they won't be able to surpass Frank Gore and Alfred Morris for Matt. Gore is going to go off against the Jaguars. Everybody does. And Alfred Morris, I think, is going to have a solid week as the Redskins, I think, are going to try to run the ball to keep Denver off the field. Matt's going to win the tight end position as well, having Gronkowski back. Huge win for Matt. Great pick for him, and I think he'll beat most tight ends the rest of the way and definitely beat Kyle Rudolph this week. Terrence Williams, great pickup for Matt. Wide receiver for Dallas. I think he's going to be the number 2 wide receiver for Dallas now. And Matt stacking his team with Dallas Cowboy wide receivers. So everything the Cowboys do through the air to their wide receivers, Matt's getting points for, and I think that they're going to actually have a good week against Detroit. Cecil Shorts is a little banged up going up against San Francisco. That's a decent play. I think that Ruben Randall is, Ruben Randall is going to have a good week, and Brown is going to have a decent week. So I'm going to give the flex position to Sandvig on this one. Defenses, go to Matt. Seattle, they're going to beat Oakland, I think, this week. But all in all, I think that Sandvig will get the win. Though it might be tight, Sandvig will get the win, taking his team to 500 and bringing Matt's team down to 500. All right, we go to the next matchup, which is the number 1 team in the league versus the number 8 team in the league. Spinogle's team is actually on a bit of a hot streak. In the last 3 weeks, he is 2-1. So he started off slow, but he's coming on strong. So we have Spinogle going up against Mopper. Both teams are getting hit with buys this week. I'm not sure if Mopper is going to make a drop or just going to put his team out there with having one quarterback. But Jake Locker has a bye, so he's getting 0 points right now for Mopper's team. Tom Brady is not having that great a year, as Momper has already showed us through the stats. And he's going up against Cam Newton, who already has 27 points to his name, and Ben Roethlisberger. So I'm actually gonna say that Spinogle gets the quarterback position win this week. Spinogle then has problems with the bye. Andre Johnson on a bye. So he has Vincent Jackson, who already has 7 points, who's actually been playing really well the last couple weeks, only getting him 7 points. I'm not sure who's going to plug in there, but there's no way they're going to beat out Thomas and Nelson. So Momper gets the win at wide receiver. Running back, Momper is facing a fortunate situation where he has Andre Johnson and Arian Foster on a bye this week. So I'm going to give Marshawn Lynch a lot of points on Monday night. I think they're going to do very well against St. Louis. And Spiller is doubtful and hasn't been doing that great this season. So I think that Mopper is going to get the win at the running back spot. Tight end wise, I think it's going to be close. Spinogle will probably win it with Julius, his Orange Julius tight end. The flex position, I'm going to say it's going to go to Spinogle with Wes Welker. I think he had a bad week last week, which was helpful in my matchup against Spinogle, only beating him by 2 points or 3 points. Wes Welker and Peyton Manning are going to make it a point to get back in sync with one another. I think they're going to have a great week, which is going to be a double whammy for Momper, because anything going to Welker means it's not going to Thomas. So I'm actually going to give the flex position to Spinogle on this one. Defenses, I'm going to say it's going to be a wash. I think San Francisco is going to do very well against the Jaguars, and I think Spinogle is my upset special of the week going up against Mopper. I think he has a great chance, already having 44 points locked up to Mopper's 5. I think Spinogle can actually do it this week. All right, our next game is going to be Pierce versus JB. Little smack talk already going on. Sweet, some nice. The interesting thing about this matchup is that Pierce in the last 4 weeks is 3-1, and JB in the last 4 weeks is 1-3. So the team's going in opposite directions. But let's get into the matchup. Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers, they're gonna win that position for Pierce every week. So I'll give him the win at quarterback. Larry Fitzgerald has a great matchup this week against Atlanta. And Hakeem Nicks is just not the Hakeem Nicks of old. But I think he is going to be the worst out of the 4 wide receivers in this matchup. You have Green and Bolden for JB. I'm going to give JB this one, the win at the wide receiver position, but because of Larry Fitzgerald's matchup, I could easily see Pierce winning this one, but I don't think it'll happen. At running back, Fred Jackson and Noshawn Marino, I think, cancel each other out. They'll both have great weeks, and I think actually Stephen Ridley is going to play very well against Miami this week. So I'm going to give the running back position to JB. Tight end, Vernon Davis, Jordan Reed. Reed's doing well right now, but Vernon Davis, anyone going up against Jacksonville, I'm gonna pencil into having a solid week. Darren Sproles, I think, is going to have a good week. Mendenhall will not. Boykins will, and Mike Wallace will not have a good week this week. Belichick likes to take out the top weapons from the other team and just focus on them and have other players step up. So I think he takes Wallace out. Boykins is going to have a solid week, but Sproles is going to. I think they're going to tie at the flex position. Carolina only getting 9 points for JB. New England, I think that'll be close too. I'm going to end up giving this win to Pierce, taking his team to 500 and bringing JB's team down to 500. Now, the game of the week. If the playoffs started today, these two teams would be going up against one another. Myself versus Dave Crosby. We 4-3 versus a 3-4, respectively. Second versus the fourth. And again, as Pierce and JB's matchup, my team in the last 4 weeks is 3-1. Crosby's team is 1-3. So again, another one of these teams going in opposite directions right now. And so Matt Ryan against Arizona, good matchup. Breeze against the Bills, again, another good, favorable matchup. So I'm gonna give, well, although Stafford going up against Dallas, Romo against Detroit, two solid quarterbacks. I'm gonna give this one to Crosby at the running back position. Wide receiver, you have Deshaun Jackson and Cruz against Gordon and Decker. Gordon's going up against Kansas City, and it's either playing him or Dwayne Bowe, and, well, we all know Dwayne Bowe this year. So I'm going to give the wide receiver position to Crosby as well. Running back position, I think, is very, very easy to say. LaShawn McCoy is going to get back on track this week against the Giants. Adrian Peterson's a little hurt, but again, playing Monday night, which is interesting how it seems like every time there's a Sunday night game, one team is playing the next Monday night, or whenever there's a Monday night game the next week, one of those teams is playing on Sunday night. It's interesting how that's been happening a lot this year. Adrian Peterson, I think, is going to play well this week. And Lamar Miller, I do not think will play well because they'll be using Daniel Thomas. At tight ends, I'm gonna give Heath Miller the win at tight end. He's having a solid year since he's come back. And then when you get to the flex position, my team has a lot of flex appeal. I'm going to go with Jamal Charles and Darren McFadden, who has been said to be looking explosive this week in practice. I think they will outperform Halou and Michael Floyd, a player that I drafted and no longer have on my team. But I think I'm going to give the flex position to myself. Denver's defense, Cincinnati's defense, I think Cincinnati's going to win that one. All in all, though, with all of the advantage projected points-wise my team has, I actually think Crosby's going to win this matchup and end my little streak. Bringing me to 500 and bringing him to 500. So I think after this week, 6 out of the 8 teams will all be at 500. I love you all. I hope you've enjoyed this preview, and I hope you all have a wonderful Week 8. Go get them.